Welcome everybody to our second Q&A with A&J. So our topic today is going to be help. My boss has too many great ideas. How to wrangle a leader that is a visionary. Just a welcome to everybody. We're going to go over some ground rules, do a little introductions. We'll talk about our why. We'll get into a little short presentation, and then we'll get right into Q&A and more of a discussion point. So thanks for everybody that submitted their questions ahead of time. So it's exciting to see a lot of those. So we've got a lot to cover today. A couple ground rules. You are muted, so you can use chat. You can unmute yourself to ask questions. This is meant to be interactive, so please unmute yourself or raise your hand if you do have questions. Be respectful. When you're not muted, everyone can hear and see you. So this is not a typical webinar. Everybody's on here. So if we don't get to your questions that you submitted, we will try to answer those over email, or if you have follow-up questions after we try to answer them, we'll do that after. And we're going to end right on time. So we'll end up either early or on time based on this. So right at 3 o'clock. Jen, kick us off with a little bit about One Bold Step.
Sorry, I was responding to Greg in the chat there. A little Beastie Boys going on in the side chat. One Bold Step. So what do? We are a marketing strategy and operations firm that approaches marketing from the perspective of lean principles. So if you think about it, taking lean practices from manufacturing and business to the sales and marketing process, because it's a process, we use those principles to try to make marketing more measurable. And that means we create systems and accountability. And really, we're all about not just having the great big idea, but how do we get that idea done? Because at the end of the day, we think marketing should be measurable and therefore manageable, to quote Peter Drucker. And that marketing is always value add and not overhead. And that's why we started One Bold Step, just to kind of put our twist on the typical marketing agency. With that, I'd like to introduce my friend and a client of ours, Mike Schipper. Mike is our visionary extraordinaire today, and he's going to do a little intro, and then we're going to go back and forth on the visionary versus the integrator roles. So take it away, Mike.
Thanks for the intro, Jen, and thanks for having me on the call. So as Jen mentioned, my name is Mike Schipper. I'm the CEO of InsITe Business Solutions. InsITe is a technology managed services provider. So we primarily work in highly regulated industries such as manufacturing, distribution, supply chain, healthcare, and so on. We help our clients take care of all things technology, from building strategy to deploying technology, managing it, securing the technology, as well as applications integration, business improvement, all of those things. To give you a little bit of context relative to this meeting, just a quick bit of background. So in 2013, I recognized the managed service provider industry was really neglecting the true role of technology, which is to drive meaningful business value in the end. Too much money was being spent on keeping the lights on, which we call foundational technology. And not enough money was being invested in moving the organization up forward, which we consider or we call innovation technology. Things like process improvement, better collaboration, gaining efficiencies through application and process integration. So I jumped out and launched InsITe. And when I did that, I set a vision for InsITe, and that was to help our clients drive that proper balance, or what we call the technology investment ratio. So basically what that is it's properly balancing your foundational and your innovational technologies in order to ensure our clients actually leverage technology to transform their business and turn it from simply a cost to an actual positive investment for their business. We do that through gaining deeper understanding of our clients. As we start in relationships, we look holistically at process with an eye on how technology can positively improve their business. And then we build strategies to help identify true costs and make sure our clients' technology investment is optimized. So all that is to say, Because we take this unique approach, following our original vision, we're truly disrupting our market, but it definitely doesn't make it easier on our team. And so I guess all of that is why Jen, Adam, and the One Bold Step team consider me a visionary.
Mike has a lot of ideas, so he's here. We always balance each other out for how are we going to get things done and also share those ideas. So we definitely see Mike as this visionary role, as Jen and myself are more that integrator role. So we've invited him on to balance us out today, because it wouldn't be just fair to pick on visionaries without having one on the call. So a little bit more.
Pick on Mike a little bit.
Yes. So when we had this idea for Q&A with A&J, there was so much going on with COVID this year. We just thought, let's have a group. People were kind of overwhelmed and had this Zoom fatigue, right, with webinars and with online conferences. So let's have this interactive session. So feel free to turn on your screens. Definitely share. It's nice to see all your faces. So this is meant to be interactive. So please do so. So Jen, kick us off a little bit. Let's cover visionary or integrator, that CEO level there. You can kick it off with talking a little bit about that integrator position.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to set everybody straight. This is not our idea. These are not our terms. This comes from Gino Wickman's book called Rocket Fuel. If you're familiar with Wickman's work, he is also one of the founders of the EOS strategic planning model and the book Traction. So if you've read Traction or practice EOS, you've heard these terms come up before. And if you haven't read it, or even if you just want to go to Blinkist and look at the quick summary of it, Rocket Fuel goes on to say that there exists within organizations two types of CEOs. And in the most successful organizations, you're actually going to have one of each. I think one of my favorite examples would be Henry Ford, and I think it's James Couzens. So Ford had the ideas, and Couzens actually managed or set up that immense dealer network that really gave Ford the ability to service the vehicles, and brought them forward as the first to have that kind of a network. So it's that combination that makes the magic. That being said, these two mindsets don't naturally go together, which will be the most of our conversation today, is how do you work together, because it does show better results when you do, without picking each other apart because your personalities naturally do this. So with that, I'll let Mike talk a little bit about this description of a visionary and how he thinks that fits or doesn't fit him.
Yeah, absolutely. When I look at the points that you have in visionary, I definitely like to operate on hope and emotion, for sure. It's one of those things where, sleeping in the middle of the night and all of a sudden something pops in my head and, hey, this is really great. There's this great new idea, right? I do a lot of research, a lot of reading, so a lot of new ideas popping out constantly. I'm definitely impulsive, and I love to work on the big ideas for sure. So that certainly holds true for me. My team always gives me a hard time because I'm always the one who wants to try to leverage new, innovative, and collaborative technologies. So something new comes out, I'm that guy who's like, hey, let's jump on that. Let's test this out. And the way I look at it is, from a visionary perspective, it keeps us on the front end, and it allows us to be able to answer the questions when others are using it, but it definitely pushes the team also through continual learning and that type of stuff. So yeah, those things definitely align with my way of thinking.
And on the integrator side, this is usually the person that holds people to the consistent cadence of meetings, which we'll talk about later and why those are important. Results, logic, you might call them a linear thinker. Let's say Mike might go from, in a solution, he might go from A to Z, and the integrator, I like to say, is back there going, wait, what about B, C, D, E? What are all the steps that are going to get us there? Realism, keeping things moving. They have strong project management skills. And at the end of the day, they're typically really accountable to the P&L and to the numbers. Now, someone just asked, I saw it pop up in the chat, can you be a mix of both? What's interesting is in the back of the book, Rocket Fuel, there's actually a quiz. So you can go through, take the quiz, and it will tell you which one that you are. It is pretty rare that you have somebody who sits in the middle. It's almost like a classic, you know, your right brain to your left brain. Some people are more of one than the other, but to find somebody who's dead on in the center is quite rare. But if you're interested, I'd suggest going and taking the quiz.
So it covered a little bit about, you know, who they are. So why organizations need both. Visionaries see the future and know where to go. And Jen pointed out integrators get them there. So they have those steps that they're going to take to go from A to Z. It seems like without both roles filled, a team can get very confused or discouraged. With an idea person or a visionary, they might spitball ideas and have those thoughts, and a team might feel overwhelmed and definitely confused by just, you know, where do we start? How do we get there without that integrator role? A vision needs to be cast and also articulated to the team correctly. So having this vision and then having the plan to actually incorporate that is a very big piece of why you need both. And, you know, I stole this, but one is the why and the other is the how. So without both of those kind of rowing the boat together, potentially teams can struggle. So it's important for organizations to have both the integrator and the visionary on the team. So we wanted to go over a little tips and tricks on how to align with a visionary leader. Jen, you'll kick us off with kind of that agile approach.
Sure. So this is one way that I have found it easier to work with visionary leaders. So I don't know how many of you have heard of Agile or Agile project management. It's a methodology that I think comes out of software development, but they're finding that this approach actually applies to all kinds of project management. So I recently went and got certification in the Agile marketing approach, for example. And if it's something that, if you're really looking for a new way to get work done, and we'll go into this more below, it is a great way to manage projects, especially when you're aligned with a visionary, because you start out with this mindset shift, right? It's all about working together and having the ability to adapt to change, which if you're in project management, change is hard, right? But if you're working with a visionary, change it's a given. It's going to happen. So you're going to have that mindset. It also is about small releases and iterations and experimentations so that you're not putting all of your eggs and all of your work into this gigantic project. And let's say you get, 9 months of the way there on a 12-month plan and the visionary throws you a curveball and you throw your hands up in the air. Agile is more about breaking that into smaller pieces and testing it and iterating along the way. It has a commitment aspect to it, which integrators like. It's got a cadence, it's got a set cadence of how we line up the work, how we do the work, and then how we change the work when the visionary throws us the change. It's also very team oriented. So it comes from that place of more of a servant leadership. It works better with millennials and some of the younger generations that are up and coming because it includes them in the process of organizing the work. So they don't feel like it's been put on them. It's a part of what they've decided they can do in that time. So I won't go into all the details, but I do think that understanding and looking at Agile is a big step in the right direction when you're an integrator trying to work with a visionary.
So talk a little bit about how Agile works. I know, Mike, you probably have some thoughts in this too. Just you had a kind of a similar model being a technology company as well. So.
And there's, I don't know how many of you have heard of these terms, but there's different frameworks that are used by Agile organizations. So Scrum, Kanban, Scrumban, and Lean, and they all do the same thing. Okay, they identify a finite amount of work to do in a short amount of time. Doesn't that sound wonderful? As an integrator, to me, that's like, yes, because that means I'm knocking stuff off my list. And that work is always being pulled forward into these manageable chunks from a prioritized backlog of work. And the team really focuses on what can you get done within what we would call a sprint, which is usually a period of 2 or 4 weeks. So you constantly have this movement, and it just feels so good as an integrator to cross these things off your list and move them to the done bucket. But then when you're done, you can look at your review, you can review your work. Are you successful? Could we do it better in the next time? And then as a team, you go back into the backlog and you pull the next amount of work forward. It allows the team to just have this build, learn, adapt cycle so that when the curveball comes, you can take a look at what you've got going on and you can see where that curveball might fit in and also what you might have to throw out of the current sprint in order to do that work. So I think Mike, I don't know if you want to add anything there, but I think our next slide is a sample board, which
You have an example.
yeah,
So,
yeah, you're going to be really familiar with. Is there anything you would add there, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I always tell our team, have a plan, right? And as I mentioned earlier, InsITe is all about strategy. And so as we engage with our clients, we want to have a plan. We want to have that strategy, and breaking it down into those smaller pieces, smaller manageable pieces helps a ton. And for me, Agile really allows me to see what's going on, what's coming up, what's on hold. So I know it's getting done in those smaller chunks towards that larger vision that we've agreed on. And it gives me those constant reminders of what we agreed on, and keeps me also in line and trusting and seeing the team executing on that plan. So it's super helpful from my perspective.
So one way you could set this up is, example here is high level tasks. So all the initiatives that you might want to cover as part of your strategic plan, or your, we call that a roadmap. So the initiatives that you want to tackle in the year, and you might have, we use a tool called Asana for project management. And so we'll have a board that's just set up for all of the roadmap items, all those initiatives throughout the year. And then each quarter, ideally, you pull in what you want to accomplish in that quarter. So as a team where you're focused, because they all came from the initiatives. And then you look at the 2 weeks of work. And so you can start with needs review. There's usually typically blocked items, and so you can cover what needs to happen. What are you currently working on? And then what's on deck in this next 2 weeks that you're going to pull forward. So this is just a visual of how you can actually set this up using a tool like Basecamp or Asana or Monday or any of those different tools. Teams, another one.
What I think is really helpful is if you look at that in progress category, and let's say you've only got, 2 people on the team, and each person has, at 85% capacity, 32 hours to get work done. Sometimes what we've had to do is each task in the in progress has attached to it an estimate of hours. And in that in progress column, we assign what we would call a WIP limit. So there is a limit to the work in progress, because you cannot have more work in progress than you have hours available. Now, there's something really special about this visual component of a board like this, because a visionary will look at that and say, but I want to, oh, wait, man, everybody is really full right now and they're working on these important things. Do I really want to do that right now? Right? I think that the WIP limit really, really helps get your point across, because you can't get more out of the same group of people. It is what it is. There's a finite amount of time there.
So the other important thing to realize with this before we move on is this doesn't just have to be marketing teams. It doesn't have to be development teams. We've seen this done in sales organizations as well. So we have a current client that actually has the same model with their sales pursuits. So they fill their board with who they're going to reach out with in the next 2 weeks. And they have touch points and tasks along the way that they're gonna have, and they use a sprint board for their sales pursuits, which is kind of an interesting approach for how you'd use even an agile model for that. So it doesn't just have to be marketing, doesn't have to be development. You can use it for other departments in your organization.
And Adam, as you slide to go to the next slide, slide to the next slide. What's interesting about having that board is that you have to get your visionary to at least give you a half an hour every 2 weeks so that they view that board. And that's where this cadence and where these meetings really come into play. So that was me giving you a little bit of a segue, unless you want me to talk about the meetings, Adam.
Yeah, I think we both chime in on these meetings. I kind of merged 2 slides together because it's important to know that you have these reoccurring meetings. So maybe it's annual planning, so you get your roadmap items. You're looking at this quarterly. It's ideally you're looking at what you did and what you're going to do in the future and kind of adjusting based off the ideas. And then you're sharing kind of that monthly report card. And that's something that we love to say is should be visual. So as a visionary, they like to see that as dashboard views or that report where they can get a high level understanding of what's happening that month. And then setting up, as Jen mentioned, those bi-weekly project sprints. So
what's interesting about this cadence as well is that communication, the definition of communication is 2 ways. You're sending and someone is receiving, right? And when I look at how a lot of organizations exist, they're great at communicating either top down or bottom up, but not both ways. When you hold yourself to a set cadence where you go from annual planning to quarterly, to monthly, to bi-weekly, to the daily stand-up, it gives that opportunity. There's a saying that authority exists at one level, but all the knowledge, the inner workings of how things actually get done happens at another. And so if you're not able to have this cadence where information comes down and information goes back up, you've got really one of my favorite words, bifurcated structure, and you're not being as efficient as you actually could be. Holding people to a meeting cadence is paramount if you're going to make the visionary and the integrator work well together. The other thing we like to do is we've actually created a little report card for ourselves. And every month we send our report card out to our clients, and that says basically, here's what we said we were going to do. Here's what we did, right? Because another part of running a lean organization and getting things done is visual. So just like the board is visual and you're seeing the work move, the visual report card is a reminder of how you're doing against your goals. The visionary will be up top in this lofty goal space, and you're going to have to remind them of your incremental, everything that you're doing, right, is an incremental lift against that big goal. Sometimes that gets lost in transitions. So the visual report card is also another really good way to keep the visionary and integrator together.
And Mike, you can probably validate this, but the real why is being able to see what's working and what's not working and have that kind of accountability piece to that visionary. And I think that's important to call out, because if something's working and maybe you need more time or more budget allocated towards going after what's working, it's important to keep everybody on that same page.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's nothing worse in my mind than having a big idea and not really knowing where things are. So this helps a ton, and seeing the work that's going into it. Yeah, absolutely agreed.
So another thought and idea, Jen, take this away because you tell this story so well. So it's the Disney drawer.
I love this story. So if you've read the book, you've heard it before, but it's just one of my favorites. So the Walt Disney Company was run by brothers. Now everybody knows Walt. He was the visionary, but very few people know about Roy Disney, the integrator. And so the story goes that the parks were once again on the edge of financial ruin. And Roy had every investment banker, brain, finance, accountant in his office. They were heads down. They'd been heads down for hours trying to figure out how to save the park, how to keep the doors open. When all of a sudden the door flies open, here comes Walt. I've got it. And everybody stops what they're doing and they're like, oh my gosh, what? And he says, I figured out how to make Abraham Lincoln talk. So in the Hall of Presidents, the animatronics, he figured that out. He threw everybody off their game. All of the solution that they almost had just went gone. And so the story goes that between their offices in the foyer, Roy put a desk with a drawer. And he said, here's the deal, Walt, when you get a really good idea, write it down, put it in the drawer, and I commit to you that once a quarter, we're gonna open that drawer, we're gonna pull out all those ideas, and I'm gonna help you put those into priorities, and then we will try to work some of them through the system. But you cannot bust into my office and take us all off track like that again. And so thus the Disney drawer. And what I love about it is that you're never telling your visionary no, because it's really hard to do. In fact, I don't even think that Mike hears that word. Do you hear that word, Mike? No, it's not a thing.
Which word?
Yeah, exactly. No. Exactly. But with a Disney drawer, it's not a no, it's a not right now, right? You can keep all those great ideas, and even the bad ones. And then when you bring them all out together and sort through them, it makes everybody feel heard. And I mean, Mike, how has that, other than, having to say on occasion, ooh, do you think that could go in the Disney drawer? How do you feel about having that as sort of our idea holder?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And how that fits into Agile is awesome. I mean, seeing all of the pieces that folks are working on, have an easy place to throw things in. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. When anybody has an idea, even somebody who's not a visionary, you do want to be heard, and you want people to take that idea seriously, at least to the point to say, hey, maybe let's hang on. And I think that the concept of having that place to put it, where we say, okay, yeah, we've got too much going on. There's too much in the whip. We can't do that right now. Oh yeah, I can see that visually. Yep, that makes sense. Okay. So it becomes either we replace something with it or we put it in the Disney drawer. And yeah, that's definitely, and by the way, Jen told me that same story. She's such a great storyteller back maybe a year ago. And I jumped right on it and was like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So thanks for introducing me to that concept.
Yeah, take that one, everyone. It works.
Thank you, Lisa, for admitting that you're a visionary, maybe in your company. So it made me smile seeing that in our chat. So just to kind of recap some of the tips and tricks, Jen.
Yeah, so a couple of ways, and we tried to keep the presentation short so we can go right into questions, but tips and tricks to managing the visionary, or having a good relationship between your visionary and your integrator, would be to seriously consider and lean into that Agile approach. To implement a Disney drawer tomorrow, it doesn't have to look like that one, the Disney drawer, but really easy to do. To consider report cards, simple report cards that show the visionary the progress you are making against their big, gigantic goals. And I do love this one. It's just a reminder, you have to say something 7 times before somebody really hears you. And it's that open communication between the integrator and the visionary, where you just have to remember we're doing this. Remember we were doing this. Hey, yes, we're still doing this. Sometimes it takes that much in order to get the communication clear, so that the visionary understands and feels heard and knows that you're working on it. And then the last one is just, it comes from that idea of the WIP limit. If you look at your team and your people and have an inventory mindset, I only have so much inventory. How am I going to use it? Your inventory are your people and your hours. What is the best use of my inventory? I think that will help as well when you're looking to prioritize and to put things into your in progress category. So anything that, I'll leave that open to Mike and Adam and see if I've missed anything there, but that's a copy of the book if you're looking for it.
So I just had a quick thought, which we didn't cover when we were preparing for this, but even like a marketing request form of when people from your company like to generate ideas, and it goes into one spot and in a spreadsheet, that's a way you can collect information, and it doesn't necessarily have to even live in a Asana or a board or anything like that. Just a place where you can collect ideas and go through them quarterly is a good approach. So as Jen mentioned, we'll kind of jump ahead into Q&A. I want to thank everybody again for submitting questions. I know the first one, we had a few questions, maybe 2 or 3, and we had them when we were just doing it over Zoom, but we got a good handful of questions here. So we're going to try to cover as many as we can in the next half hour. So the first one, I did group some of these together, so you'll see that as well. I'd love to hear a tactful way to encourage a visionary to take a breath / step back and really vet a new idea or program instead of immediately saying yes to everything that sounds interesting. Jen, you want to talk about radical candor?
Yeah, so I don't know how many of you have read this book, but it's called Radical Candor. It's by Kim Scott. And I think that the key to having that kind of relationship with your visionary, when you say tactful ways, it's all about the communication that you have with your visionary. So Kim Scott puts it on this matrix right here, where basically at the top, if you care about each other personally, so you have a good relationship between the visionary and the integrator, and with that, you are willing to challenge each other directly on where you're coming from, you live in this magic quadrant of what is known as radical candor. And it's the most effective and efficient way because sometimes you can let go of a little tact, right? Because you have done the groundwork to know that you care about each other and you challenge each other directly. What happens though, is that sometimes you don't care about this person personally, but you're really good at challenging them directly. We call that obnoxious aggression. It's going to make it really hard for you to have that kind of conversation. And then the other one that cracks me up kind of. So if you care about people a lot, but you don't dare to challenge them directly, you live in the space of ruinous empathy. It means you're really nice, but you're not going to get it done. And then of course, the worst quadrant is where you don't care and you're not going to challenge anybody. And you're just basically living in manipulative insincerity. So with this question, what I came to is the way to be tactful is to really work on your communication between your visionary and your integrator. Maybe even take a look at the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, which talks a lot about how you get to that point so that you can have that radical candor and that you can get those things done. Mike, what are the ways that, like we say it, that bug you versus what are the ways that, when you come up with an idea and I don't know, I say it in a way that you're like, oh, okay, that's all right. Like what's more tactful in your opinion?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, ruinous empathy actually makes me think of Minnesota nice.
It's like Michigan nice. Yeah, West Michigan nice. Yep.
I don't know if we have any Minnesotans in here, but anyway, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think and I haven't read the book, so just full disclosure. But for me, I think, being heard, as we talked about in a previous slide, and having that conversation around, okay, how might this fit into what we're trying to do right now? Is there something we shouldn't do and replace it with this, right? The one thing I think, though, that this triggers in my mind is it's really important in order to challenge to have a common vision. So vision, mission, values, well articulated. And so if you're working with a visionary and you're not sure where the company is going, what the long-term goals are, you don't have an established vision, mission, and values, I would encourage you to push for that. Because when you challenge, when you listen and you dialogue a little bit, but then when you challenge, if you're challenging against challenging in line with that vision, mission, values, and the long-term goals, for me, when somebody comes to me and says, yeah, right, Mike, that's really cool, but how does that fit with our mission? Remember, we're trying to do this and that with the company, and this is kind of where we're going with our longer-term goals. And it, pops that into my head, and I go, oh, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Okay, Disney drawer, right? Or, yeah, let's just drop that. You're right. It doesn't align with our vision, mission, and values. And I think there's a question that is coming up pretty soon around that same topic. But for me, that's just super helpful. And that's what I would see as kind of that key component to radical candor of how you can help your visionary allow you to have radical candor.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, the next one, how do you handle two visionary leaders who do not agree and have created a roadblock for growth? This was a good question.
We had fun. We had fun with this one.
We had fun. So Jen, I'll let you start it.
Well, a big part of this is to hold people to an annual strategic planning process where you don't get to leave the room until a plan has been agreed upon, right? The other thing that we really strongly recommend would be some leadership coaching. We had Jay Hidalgo on our last webinar, and he's just a great example at helping people communicate, getting them to set goals and agree to those goals together might also help. That then you can always say, wait, is what you're asking me to do leading to that goal? You guys agreed on these goals, we need to go there. So those were just a couple of ideas that we had. I think, Adam, you had one other one.
I said introduce a great merger and acquisition rep, because if you can't get through those with goal setting and leadership coaching or strategic plan, maybe it's just time you introduce a good rep. So they can't align. So there might be some issues there.
Yeah. Anything you'd add there, Mike? That's a tough one. That would be really hard.
Yeah, I think again, I'd go back to setting that vision and having common ground.
Yep.
So, and being honest with the communication. Hey, I'm having a hard time knowing what my priorities are. Can we work together to set those priorities between the two leaders? Something they can agree on so that you can hold to that.
It's important.
Just for knowledge, the outcome of that ended up being that it was determined neither one had a plan.
And then there's that.
And there's that. Yes.
So there you have it. But I just thought I'd, see what else had to be said. But that is and as far as you know, plan is still not made.
That's a problem. Yep.
Thanks, Catherine. So I grouped these together. What's the balance between allowing my boss to dream and keep him or her from derailing our plans? How do you say, hang on a minute, without dampening enthusiasm? And how to prevent an idea person from constantly going down a new rabbit hole instead of focusing on high-level plans / needs. It's, I start here, you let them dream. It's what they're good at. And you need to be okay with some of that change. And I think as we talked earlier about the visual boards and keeping track of things and the ideas and having that be visual is a really important piece. So that Disney drawer definitely gets thrown into this mix of how do you just let them dream, because that's what they're going to be good at. Jen, you mentioned something about showing the impact of what gets moved is another big one. And Mike, I know you can add to this of seeing okay, we're going to have to pull this one. And if you want to add this one, and so you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, actually, Jen did it to me the other day what I didn't mention, one bold step helps us with marketing. And the other day I brought something to Jen. I was all excited about it. And I had asked Jen specifically to do this to me. And she came back and she said, okay, well, do we want to drop this and that in order to do that? Or do you want to open up a new project with new costs? And, and I went, I don't want to do either of those. But it started a great dialogue. And so what we kind of ended up shelving that went in the Disney drawer, and having, again, sounding like a broken record, having that agile process allowed us to do that.
Yeah. One of the things I also heard a lot at another company in Grand Rapids called OST that I absolutely loved is it's not a no. When somebody comes with a great idea and they're all excited, you should never just look at them and say no. My favorite thing to do, and I think Mare does this really well over at OST, it's a yes and. Yes and. Mike, you've got a great idea? Yes. And so how are we going to blah, 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 blah? Yes and. Or, you can do yes but that doesn't come across as well as yes and. So try that out sometimes when somebody's hitting you with a bunch of great ideas, because you're validating their idea with the yes, and then you're taking them into your world with the and.
Yeah, and good point. To go back to the, we need to drop these few things in order to do that. One of the things that tells me is that they're really paying attention to what I asked for prior. And so when somebody can spell back to you or show you, hey, this is what we're working on right now, it's also proof that they're really sticking to what the plan was, which is that feels good too.
Greg, yes, and I'm excited to see you execute that. I'm not sure that's what you should add to the end of that sentence, but give it a try, Greg.
Let us know how that works out.
Yeah, let us know how that works. Once you wrangle the visionary ideas, and how do you ensure the strategic alignment throughout the organization? This is another really, really good one. Jen, you should cover this one.
Well, I in previous, jobs where I led larger organizations, I loved the cadence of the company meetings, and having the feedback I think we got at SalesPad, Adam, where we were going from all company meetings, to executive meetings, and they were like, you got a whole group of managers who have some serious feedback that needs to come in. And we ended up breaking up our meetings to allow for a subset managers meeting, right? To make sure that the idea was vetted through the managers, was then talked to with their teams. The teams gave feedback to the managers brought it back up to the executive team, which influenced then the next quarterly company all meeting. And so I absolutely loved that. We had a cadence, and no matter what, we stuck to it. We didn't skip on company meetings. The same thing was really effective for me over at Susan G. Komen, when you're trying to manage multiple locations and entities, that you have something and you stick to it. The other thing that's really important is, as a leader, if you can take your goals, your 2 or 3 goals for the organization, and you can meet with your next level, your directors, and make sure that their goals directly roll up to your goals, and then have your directors meet with their managers and have their goals roll up. There's this beauty in what I call cascading KPIs, that everybody's working on something that's connected to what the other people are working on, that's connected to where the company is going. That visual, there's another Patrick Lencioni book coming to mind. It's like the 5 signs of a miserable job, or 3 signs of a miserable job. When people can't see how what they are doing is impacting the company, if they can't see how they matter, you lose that strategic alignment. So I really think that that having those cascading KPIs really helps.
And as that integrator, it's important, because I will tell you that when Jen had those meetings, I still remember them. After the quarterly meeting and after the manager's meeting, Jen would go back and ask questions about what happened in our one-on-ones with the people that were reporting to us. So we had to be prepared, and we learned right away that Jen was going to ask those questions in our, in our planning meetings, to make sure that we are actually telling the whole company what we were doing. So it was a very, very important piece. So, but it all starts with, Mike, and you talked a little bit about this. The visionary has to have a vision to start. Right?
Definitely. Well, I'm sure there's scenarios where, though, maybe the visionary isn't setting the vision necessarily. I've seen that scenario, and in that situation, I would push to have that defined and offer how you can help define it, so that you can have those guideposts to guide you through things. So it's absolutely critical.
Do you agree that middle management needs to buy into the vision and strategic alignment before execution of the visionary idea can occur? Yes. Basically, your whole team should be bought into that. It goes back to the right people in the right seats. And if they're not bought into that vision, I always ask, if they're not aligned with the vision, are they aligned with the values? And it's important to make sure that you have the right people in the right seats that are kind of going in that direction. So it's very, very important. It's a standard change management process. Jen, talk a little bit about that if you want.
Yeah, well, if you want to be successful in implementing change within any organization, you are more likely to be successful if you allow people to weigh in on those changes. When people weigh in, right, they are way more likely to buy in to the end solution. That's just change management 101. Mike, I know you have an example of how you do that.
Yeah. So we follow, you've been sharing some books, so I'm going to share a real quick one if you don't mind. Make Big Happen by Mark Moses. He talks about HOTS, huge outrageous targets. And for us, what we do with that to get buy-in on our high level goals for the company is we actually have an annual meeting. I'm super excited. This coming up this January, we're going to be getting together with our key management, and then we kind of do a half a day, and then we bring in a few more people to kind of talk about it. And with key management, we talk about, where are we going as a company? Let's walk again through our vision, our mission, our values, where we're going long-term as a company. What are our goals? And what are we trying to do for our community? And then, okay, what are those specific, huge, outrageous targets we can set for this year? And then, doing that with the management team really helps to create that dialogue and excitement around those. And then we bring in a little bit more of the team, a little bit lower level, bring them in and say, hey guys, this is what we're thinking about doing. Does this make sense? We get their feedback. And so we just did that for the first time this year. And it was really transformational. And so I guess my simple answer to this, it is absolutely critical. And whether you leverage Mark Moses' approach of HOTS or somebody else has one, BHAGs. I'm sure you've heard some of those things, lots of different ways to approach it, but it's absolutely critical to do that. And for us, it was transformational.
And if anybody out there is wondering, can this actually be done at an enterprise level or a very large company? I would point you in the direction of yet another book. It's called American Icon. It's how Alan Mulally saved Ford Motor Company. And he takes exactly these practices and put them into effect in one of the largest companies in the world. So it truly can work.
How can we effectively get the visionary to follow through with their ideas from start to finish? And I joke here, you don't. So that's why you hire an integrator. You really have to truly value what they bring, which going back to that point of visionary are the relationships, the ideas, maybe the relationships with maybe your largest customers they have. That's why they are there. So appreciate and value that. Definitely hire an integrator. If you want them to start going from point A to Z, there's got to be somebody in there that hold them accountable. And make sure you both are at a high level, understand the value of both of those roles. It's very, very important. Anything to add, Jen and Mike, to that one? Okay.
I think one of the things we talk about with building a sales team and in our engineering department is that there's a reason. I mean, obviously we've talked about, there's a reason that there's visionaries and there's integrators, right? One of the things I've found to hold true most of the time, and this is why it's great to have those two positions, is somebody isn't typically going to find more work for themselves, but you want people to find more work and more meaningful things and things to move the company forward. And so me as a visionary, if I know I'm going to have to do the work, it's a lot harder for me to say, hey, there's this really great idea. I'm going to execute on that. And so just, I guess, making the point of both positions are extremely important. The role of the visionary is seldom to follow through with their ideas, but they are to bring the ideas to the table, and they're relying on integrators to help them vet them and make them happen.
Good point. So balancing your marketing, boss, and team members, sales and account managers / priorities, when it all doesn't fit into 1 week and you'll try to resource better for the next week, how do you prioritize what gets done first or at all? And then I added this one because it was very, very similar. As a small business, how do you decide which ideas should be implemented and which should have to wait simply due to limited resources? Want to cover this one, Mike or Jan?
Well, you know, Mike and I had a bit of a kind of a lengthy discussion around this one. If you go back to your values of the organization, I think it's a combination, right? It's what you value and what you've prioritized overall as an organization. So I think a really good example is, as a leader, I always followed this rule. We put the employees first. We take care of the employees. If we take care of the employees are going to take care of our customers. If the employees take care of the customers, the revenue will follow. And so when I would get, you know, these priorities that were all over the place, or here comes another one, I would look and I would say, what's best for the employees? Then what's best for the customers? Then what's best for the bottom line? So I was able to take and prioritize things in alignment with my own values for the organization. So that's, you know, that's one way of doing it. You know, the other way might be that you take your overall company goals, which we like to say you can only have 4 to 6 focus areas for an organization for a year. If you have more than that, they're not really by definition a focus. So making sure that the things that you are trying to prioritize are directly related to one of those key focus areas is another way of going about it. Mike, I think you had 3, you do yours in, you have an act, or 3 C's are how you do it at InsITe. I can't remember what they stand for though. Oh, I think he's muted.
I had one of my monitors all of a sudden decide to quit on me.
Okay.
So 3 C's for us, it's clients, colleagues, and community. And so recognizing that, you know, being able to set those priorities and be able to follow those priorities along with the vision, mission, and values, and, you know, long-term company goals is super important. And so for us, it's the 3 C's. And, you know, for clients, it's all about how are we going to end up with a 5-star review at the end of everything we do. And for our colleagues, it's how are we leaning into helping each other grow, and the same for our community. And so depending on the audience, obviously with our clients, we talk about clients, colleague, and community, but those are sort of interchangeable. When we're talking internally, hey, let's make sure we're doing what is right for our employees, making sure that they're growing, feeling fed, and successful through the organization.
And I appreciate Mike and Jen calling me out, because when I first created this slide and was thinking about it, I went right to like a revenue, leads, you know, and then there's this whole culture piece, because I think of it as like a marketing approach, right? Are they generating ROI? Are you generating leads? And then we kind of backed up to this client experience and this culture piece and this employees piece. So it's important. I think the biggest piece is aligning with strategic plan and even those KPIs that you set, which is another reason why having that roadmap is so important.
Yeah, I feel like the feedback that we got from our employees, I mean, we're always trying to push to kind of push the status quo, right? And our employees came from different organizations, and one of the things that I heard consistently was that things become so robotic when it's all about, you know, sales numbers and revenue and all of this stuff. And so to have that goal to say, you know, it's about how we're building into each other and watching out for each other, how we're serving the community. Revenue will come, sales will come. We can set those goals, but let's not make them first.
So we've got about 5 more minutes, so we're going to try to go through these. I know we've covered a lot of these in our discussion, but how do we keep track of tasks and process to follow to see if they are worth pursuing? And that is, you know, project management tool. Maybe it's the spreadsheet with goals and KPIs. I would definitely make it a part of those meetings, as we called out earlier, and then hold the team accountable to those pieces. And that's why you have it visual and have meetings that incorporate it.
Before we go on to next steps, Adam, is there anything in the audience here that somebody has just like this burning question that we did not cover? I give them the opportunity to throw that out there, and then we'll wrap it up. I've seen some good stuff in the chat. but just making sure. Good. Cool.
Great. Thank you again for everyone for giving us those questions. So our next steps right after this, you'll get a survey. We'd love to hear your thoughts if we covered everything. If you liked this Q&A with A&J, definitely we will be sharing this presentation as well as the video afterwards in a blog. So comment on it, share it. And yeah, if you found it valuable, please share it with others so they can learn as well. Thank you. Save the date for our next one, which is going to be January 19th. We're going to take December off just with the holidays, but it will be January 19th at 2 p.m. And it's from search to sale, how to acquire leads from SEO and see them through to ROI. So we're going to have Lance from Avalanche Creative on with us, and we're excited about that one. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email or reach out to us on social. Like I said, though, we'll follow up with everyone with the presentation and the recording. So thank you. Thanks, Mike.